Good day, everyone. Of course, I'm John Corstein, Director Emeritus of the USS Monitor Center here at the Mariners Museum. And now I'm going to give you the tale of one person who comes into the Civil War with a tremendous reputation as a combat leader, as a squadron commander. However, as technology changes, Goldsborough cannot keep step with those changes and falters at a critical time when McClellan's army is nearing Richmond, Virginia, in, of course, May and June 1862. And in many ways, the failure of the Navy under Goldsborough's leadership will help lead to McClellan's failure. So let's talk about our guy. His name is, of course, Louis Malesherbes Goldsborough. He was born in 18 February 1805. He was the son of the chief clerk of the U.S. Department of the Navy, William Goldsborough. Now, William Goldsborough, this is a trick that a lot of people did back then. He gets his son to receive a commission as a midshipman when Goldsborough, young Goldsborough, Louis, is just 7 years old. There's one that does it earlier. That's Samuel Barron, who becomes a midshipman at age 3. What does that mean? The family gets extra income, and so life is happy. And he's placed into the as a midshipman under Secretary of the Navy Paul Hamilton, and actually the date is 28 June 1812. Now, he didn't start serving till 13 February 1816, and his first assignment is going to be at the Washington Navy Yard. Now, I want you to look at this picture we have up right now, because this is the Goldsborough that's how he's going to look all the way up until the 1850s. And so he was actually a dashing officer. So he's first assigned to, this is of course Paul Hamilton. He's first assigned to the Washington Navy Yard, which you can see here. He is on assignment there until 1826, when he's going to be assigned to the topsail schooner Porpoise, which had been built in 1820 at the Portsmouth Navy Yard, Kittery, Maine. Goldsborough, his first claim to fame is going to be that he's going to serve as part of the Aegean anti-piracy operations. You know, there was the Greco War of Independence, and they're able to free themselves from the yoke of the Ottoman rule, and everyone's happy. However, the Greeks don't get along with each other, and so a civil war erupts. The Hellenic Navy, which at one time had been very powerful, they fall apart. And so instead, we see a nest of pirates, some call themselves privateers, grow up in the Aegean waters. Now, this made the Aegean a dangerous place to go. U.S. Navy ships, merchant ships had been captured. And so one big thing is that the Mediterranean Squadron, commanded by Commodore John Rogers. Now, I just want to pause for a moment, because we hear Rogers' names throughout the Civil War. He is the patriot. He is a hero of the War of 1812. In some ways, he fired the first naval shots of the War of 1812 in actually 1811, when he had the USF President versus the HMS Little Belt. Oh my gosh, you know, he is an outstanding leader, and everyone who serves under him will become filled with these ideas of leadership, of dynamism and action, and in planning. So, Rogers, in fact, someone wrote me this week and says, so should we call Goldsborough Rogers boy? And I said, really, we just call people the Prebles boys from earlier in the 19th century. But in essence, I must admit that Rogers had an influence on just as many officers as did Edward Preble, who commanded the Mediterranean Squadron during the First Barbary Coast War. So anyway, let's get to our story. So he's on the Porpoise, and the Porpoise is commanded by Lieutenant Benjamin Cooper. And all of a sudden, several American and European ships are going to be captured. On October 16, 1827, Goldsborough will liberate the brig Comet during the Battle of Douro Passage. This is the only real battle of the anti-piracy campaign. And basically, it's going to be a night action. And Goldsborough is sent. Now, actually, a British brig, the Comet, was captured in the late afternoon, and the crew of the Porpoise saw it all happen. And so, because there was dead wind, Cooper is going to order Goldsborough to take 4 boats with 35 men, Marines and bluejackets, and to release or free the Comet. Now, the Comet, all the British seamen and officers are in chains down below. There are about 250 Greek pirates, but darkness begins to shroud the Aegean, and as a result of that, we're going to see that the boats aren't fired on by the Greeks, and so they're able to reach the boat and they rush it. And this is a tremendous action, 20 minutes at the most. Actually, one steward from the Porpoise is going to be credited with killing 9 Greek pirates, right? And so it is a vicious fight. There are about 90 Greco casualties, and somehow 150 pirates escaped. However, they had proven that these pirates cannot control commerce within the Aegean because of the might of the US Navy, which was ever so important for our nation at that time. Louis Goldsborough himself is going to receive here's the Porpoise, and here's a similar attack by Greek pirates on a merchant ship. Now, so in essence, Louis Goldsborough is going to be recognized for winning the largest battle of this war in the Aegean. And actually, he receives a message of thanks from the British government for liberating the Comet. In 1830, he's going to return to Washington, D.C., and he has the distinction of being the first officer to be placed in charge of the newly created Depot of Charts and Instruments, which later became the U.S. Hydrographic Office. Actually, it was Goldsborough who suggested that this office be created, and he was given carte blanche to basically collect and organize a centralization of instruments, charts, and books. So while there, he is going to marry the daughter of this man, and this man is William Wirt. And William Wirt is one of the most famous lawyers in America during the latter part of the 18th century and especially the first third of the 19th century. He's the guy that prosecuted Aaron Burr in Aaron Burr's treason trial. He was a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, and he actually served as Attorney General under Presidents James Monroe and John Quincy Adams from 1817 to 1829. He's the longest serving Attorney General in American history. Actually, he's so highly revered that there is going to be a third party created between the Whigs and the Democratic Republicans, and it is going to be known as the Anti-Masonic Party. Oh my gosh, he never campaigns. He never says anything bad about the Masons, and he does win a state, and Vermont gives him their electoral votes. But of course, he didn't get elected. Now, it just so happens that Goldsborough is going to marry, and Wirt is extremely wealthy. And so Goldsborough is going to marry his daughter Elizabeth, and in 1831, and it's a happy marriage. They have children known as William, Louis, and Elizabeth. And he's so in tight with the Wirt family that he will take a leave of absence from the US Navy and take a group of German settlers down to Monticello, Florida, where Wirtz had attained great estates, and he wanted to populate them and create a new community, which he indeed did. However, this is during what is known as the Second Seminole War. Oh my gosh, that's the Naval Observatory after Goldsborough leaves, and Goldsborough is going to be replaced by who will become a enemy of Goldsborough, and that is Charles Wilkes. And we'll get more into the story of that polar explorer and all round, haughty person, Charles Wilkes. So we'll talk about him again, but Goldsborough is replaced by Wilkes, and so that Goldsborough's not happy with that. Nevertheless, down in Florida, he's going to fight during the Second Seminole Wars. He leads a steamboat expedition and is very successful in attacking the Seminoles, their own communities, and that's going to help weaken the Seminole cause. Furthermore, just having a steamboat expedition is not enough for Goldsborough. So what does he do? He organizes a company of mounted riflemen to fight against the Seminoles, and is very, very successful. So by the mid-1830s, Goldsborough had, number one, risen in the ranks of the upper class by his marriage. He has risen in the esteem of the US Navy for his combat leadership. So after fighting in the Second Seminole Wars, he'll rejoin the US Navy. He'll serve on board the USF United States. And then during the Mexican War, he will be in command, or he will be stationed on the USS Ohio. And it just so happens, there's a lot of rivalries in the US Navy back then. And so in essence, the commander of the Ohio, which is a ship of the line, is going to be Silas Horton Stringham, that Goldsborough will come across again in 1861. So we'll tell more about that. So he will participate in the bombardment of Veracruz. He then will lead several boat expeditions against Tapan, which is a little north of Veracruz, and he is lauded for his leadership. Well, so after the war, he becomes the senior officer of the expedition, that explored the coast of California and Oregon. He then, between 1853 and 1857, he becomes superintendent of the United States Naval Academy. And let me just tell you, that's where he gets his nickname, Old Guts. Yes, indeed. Goldsborough was 5'10". By his service at the United States Naval Academy, he weighed 340 pounds. He would normally eat an entire chicken at a dinner, pap his stomach, and say, "Monsterly good." I mean, oh my gosh. And in fact, the midshipmen, they gave him the name Old Guts. And they actually, they never got caught, but some lit the outhouse on fire while Goldsborough was visiting it. So Goldsborough has this tremendous temper and yells and screams, "I will hang them all," but nothing happens. Of course, after serving at the Naval Academy, he will be commander of the Brazil Squadron between 1859 and 1861, when the Civil War is going to erupt. Well, we know he is going to be a leading officer in the US Navy. So when the war begins, Goldsborough is back from Brazil, waiting to be detailed to a new assignment. He's a senior officer. Remember, he's been in the U.S. Navy since 1807. So that puts him way up there. And consequently, the Ironclad Board, which will be established, or the blockade board, excuse me, that will be established to kind of identify how to do the blockade. The leading officer on it is, of course, Samuel Francis DuPont. Now, they will decide to split the North Atlantic Blockading Squadron, which at that time was commanded by Flag Officer Silas Stringham Horton. Oh my gosh, same Horton who was command of the Ohio. Stringham had led, and you can go back and look at my blog and my other YouTube program about the capture of Hatteras Inlet. He had had a very successful campaign. He employed a very unique bombardment system where his ships were moving targets in a circle. They used steam power to pull the sailing ships, so it was really successful. However, many people criticized Stringham afterwards for not consolidating the victory. Butler tries to take all the great fame. And so all of a sudden, in September of 1862, Flag Officer Samuel Francis DuPont declares that the blockading squadron is going to be divided in two, and that he, DuPont, will be in command of the South Atlantic Blockading Squadron, and Lewis Goldsborough is going to be in command of, yes, the North Atlantic Blockading Squadron. What does that do to Stringham? He's under pressure because they said he didn't do well enough at Hatteras Inlet. Look, he captured it, but that doesn't matter, public opinion. And so now he's being demoted, and particularly he's being replaced by one of his subordinates. Does Stringham like that? No. Does Goldsborough care? No. So guess what happens? Stringham resigns in just in a rush. And so Goldsborough will take command of the North Atlantic Blockading Squadron. His first real movement is going to be a well-planned operation, which is known as Burnside's Roanoke Island expedition. And during the expedition, I have to tell you that Burnside will be supported by Goldsborough's gunboats. Now, getting into Hatteras Inlet, you can't take your heavy ships in, but Goldsborough works on the Swash Channel and the inlet at Hatteras to try to get some of his deeper draft ships in. Basically, they run into the the channel and use their steam power to try and make a new channel or a deeper channel. Once he gets his ships in, he is going to be very, very effective in supporting Burnside. Burnside's victory at Roanoke Island is all thanks to Goldsborough's ability to neutralize the Confederate Mosquito Fleet commanded by William Lynch. Not only that, they're going to chase the rest of the Mosquito Fleet down all the way up to Elizabeth City and will actually destroy that Confederate command. Only 2 ships escape through the Dismal Swamp Canal. The Federals will close the Dismal Swamp Canal. The Federals will then close the Albemarle Chesapeake Canal. So in other words, this tremendous link between the sounds of North Carolina, all the agricultural goods, has been cut by Goldsborough's dynamic actions. He will play a huge role in the capture of New Bern. He'll also play a major role in the capture of Fort Macon in Beaufort, North Carolina. Wow. However, he's got some other problems, and they're big problems, because he already knew what the Confederates were doing over in Gosport Navy Yard. They're transforming the frigate Merrimack into the powerful ironclad ram, the CSS Virginia. And Goldsborough, despite going to Carolina to deal with the expedition, he will actually give orders to his fleet. Now, what he did is he put together the most powerful ships he could in Hampton Roads to guard how to get out of Hampton Roads. Fort Monroe, he's got the 47-gun steam screw frigate Minnesota, 42-gun steam screw frigate Roanoke, and the 50-gun sailing frigate St. Lawrence at Newport News Point. He's got the 24-gun sailing sloop of war Cumberland and the 52-gun sailing frigate, the Congress. Now, the Congress was very outmoded, but nevertheless, these are hundreds of guns. And so Goldsborough will say, and thinking about what if that ironclad comes out, nothing, I think, but very close work can be of service in accomplishing the destruction of the Merrimack, and even of that a great deal may be necessary. Oh my gosh, he understood that you had to pound this ship, and that the US Navy did not have, there's only one 15-inch gun, which we know is an ironclad killer in Hampton Roads. That's the Lincoln gun on Fort Monroe, which is mounted on the beach next to the lighthouse. But still, the U.S. Navy is at a disadvantage. The Confederate victory on March 8, 1862 sends shockwaves, and only the arrival of the Monitor stabilizes the situation. Everybody panics, right? And basically McClellan is all upset because why? He has decided to take his huge Army of the Potomac down to Fort Monroe and move up the peninsula to capture Richmond. His concept is actually rather brilliant, because he wants to use the York and James River to guard his flanks using the U.S. Navy, and to carry all his supplies, so he can have somewhat of a rapid movement. I know it's hard to say rapid movement when we talk about McClellan, but nevertheless, he thought he could have a rapid movement and capture Richmond. Now, the big thing is, even though the Monitor stabilizes the strategic situation in Hampton Roads, lots of things are going to change because Goldsborough is, Goldsborough has been ordered to work with McClellan. But there is this rivalry between Army and Navy, and Goldsborough says, I'm not going to work under any Army officers, command, especially a young pup like McClellan. Oh, that's bad. bad for the Union. This rivalry is going to cause great trouble. In fact, McClellan's going to write, the James River was declared by the naval authorities closed to the operations of their vessels by the combined influence of the enemy's batteries on its banks and the Confederate steamers Merrimack, Yorktown, Jamestown, and Teaser. Flag Officer Goldsborough regarded it, and no doubt justly, as his highest and most important imperative duty to watch and neutralize the Merrimack, and as he designed using the most powerful vessels in a contest with her, he did not feel able to attack the water batteries at Yorktown and Gloucester. All this was contrary to what had been previously stated to me and materially affected my plans. At no time during the operations against Yorktown was the Navy prepared to lend us any material assistance in its reduction until our land batteries partially silenced the works. Goldsborough makes a big mistake here. Well, Goldsborough, March 5th is when McClellan gets stopped by, John Bankhead Magruder's Warwick Yorktown line, and McClellan says, "Hey, help me." And Goldsborough's already said, "Look, we can't go into the James River," and that was a key component of McClellan's campaign. Well, some of you all know Gloucester Point, half-mile wide. The Confederate batteries control it. But we've already learned during the Civil War that steam-powered ships can pass by fixed batteries. They're moving targets. The forts are not. So Goldsborough fails to make this recognition, and he focuses entirely on the Virginia. Now, we knew the Monitor was a perhaps match. It could lose in a battle, it might win, but no one knows for sure. So what you have is a stalemate, and Goldsborough puts his entire heavy Navy support in Hampton Roads instead of running past the Yorktown batteries. Had he done so on April 5th or 6th, 1862, Richmond would have fallen. And there's not a lot of doubt about that. So in essence, Goldsborough is, just not up for his position. And so he will actually continue. Now, I have to tell you, the Merrimack, probably called the Virginia, will actually come out and try to challenge the Monitor on April 11, 1862. Well, what's going to happen is that Lincoln, because of his conversation with John Worden, wanted to protect the Monitor. So the Monitor was kept near between Fort Monroe and Fort Wool in the middle of Hampton Roads. Behind it were several rams that had been developed, like the USS Vanderbilt, and so they wanted to lure the Virginia out into deeper water. In turn, the Confederates wanted to lure the Monitor into Hampton Roads to have a ship-to-ship duel with some other subterfuge, such as trying to board the Monitor. So basically, on April 11th, everyone's expecting a big showdown, and nothing happens. Actually, Goldsborough said, had the Merrimack attacked the Monitor where she was and still stationed by me, I would instantly have been down before the former with all my force. The salvation of McClellan's army, among other things, greatly depends on my holding the Merrimack steadily and securely in check, not allowing her to get past Fort Monroe and so before Yorktown. My game, therefore, is to remain firmly on the defense unless I can fight on my own terms. Well, in essence, despite the overwhelming strength of the U.S. Navy, particularly by the end of April, Goldsborough remains on defense. He fails to move against Yorktown. He fails to do anything despite getting 2 more ironclads added to his fleet. Now, mind you, those ironclads are not very good. The Naugatuck, also known as the Stevens Battery, and then also the Galena, which Goldsborough didn't like. In fact, he refused to move against Sewell's Point because he said the Galena was beneath naval criticism. And despite McClellan's needs, I have to remain on defense. So this is huge. So just realize there's a month delay. The U.S. Navy is not active, and so Abraham Lincoln decides it's my time. This is the Battle of the Ironclads, just so we get the idea of. Sometimes I forget about my slides. There's Fort Monroe. You can see there's Fort Wool. Right, you can see where Sewell's Point is located. The Monitor is going to be stationed right between Fort Monroe and Fort Wool. When the Virginia comes out on April 11th, she comes into Hampton Road. She turns around. Actually, one of her wooden tenders, the Jamestown, captures 3 Union merchant ships, and they fire a gun to windward in disdain because the Monitor will not take on. Now, the commander of the Monitor, who really is not a happy guy, gouty, and thinks he's smarter than everybody else, including Erickson, will complain to William Keeler that Captain Jeffers had sat down to the old flag with permission to shell out Sewell's Point. Of course, we shan't get it. The supineness and want of energy exhibited in keeping 200 guns that are afloat here silent and useless when they could render effective service is disgraceful and shameful, and is no wonder that people are beginning to ask why something is not done. Day after day, the emblem of rebellion flaunts in our very faces. Day after day, we remain torpid and inactive. Now, I got to tell you, part of that is Goldsborough. He doesn't do anything fast. He doesn't understand the power of ironclads. He does not grasp the change in ordnance and the change in steam power. He is of the old sail Navy. And so he hasn't wrapped his hands totally around the new technology that is at his beck and call and the overwhelming strength that he has. Now, just so happens that on May 7, 1862, Abraham Lincoln is going to come down to Fort Monroe to see what is happening, because McClellan, even though finally moving out of Yorktown, the Warwick River line, and fighting the Battle of Williamsburg on May 5th, he's not getting really close to Richmond, and the James River is still closed to the Union use. So this is a huge problem. So Lincoln will come down and say, what's happening? Well, they meet in Old Quarters Number 1 on Fort Monroe, and there's the nemesis of Goldsborough. Goldsborough suffered a dreaded disease in spring of 1862 called ram fever, or Merrimack on the brain. He thought this ironclad was more powerful than any other ship in the world. He was wrong. These are the Gloucester Point batteries. You can well imagine this is when the Union occupy it. This fort was originally built in 1667. So well imagine there is a great opportunity for the Federals to pass by. This is the other ironclad they have, the Stevens Battery. Here is the ship beneath naval dignity, the Galena. I'll get to that in just a moment. So Lincoln has a meeting with Wool and with Goldsborough, and Lincoln says, okay, so what are we doing? And Goldsborough goes, oh my gosh, the Virginia, or the Merrimack, as he would have said, is over there and can sink any of our ships. We don't know if the Monitor can stop it. The Galena surely can't. And so we got a big problem. Even if we try to shell Sewell's Point, we could be destroyed. And Wool says, well, look, all we have to do is cross over, the bay and go to Ocean View and march on Norfolk from the rear. Goldsborough says, oh, I can't help with that. Geez, Lincoln, of course, is going to go and visit the fleet on May 8th. And so, oh my gosh, he actually meets Commander John Rogers, yes, the son of Goldsborough's John Rogers. And I'm going to tell you that, and even better, Rogers has married the daughter of the Quartermaster General Montgomery Meigs. So we have this great connection. And so he says to Lincoln, look, all we have to do is take the Galena and a couple of other ships up into the James River to fight the Confederate batteries at low tide so that the Merrimack cannot chase after us because of her heavy draft. Wow, that sounds good. And actually Rogers says, look, we might even reach Richmond before the U.S. Army can. So Lincoln is impressed. However, I have to tell you that Goldsborough will not really be that active, and Lincoln orders a naval attack on May 8th, where he follows John Rogers' concepts, where the Galena will go up into the James River to shell Fort Boykin and Fort Huger on the south side of the James River. However, Goldsborough will send the Monitor, the San Jacinto, the Seminole, the Dakota against Sewell's Point and begins bombarding it. All of a sudden, what's going to happen? The Virginia comes out, and Goldsborough orders the Monitor to retreat. Actually, Lieutenant David Constable of the Naugatuck will note that his instructions were to engage the battery, and if the Merrimack made her appearance, to fall back out of the way to induce her to come out into the roads so that she could be attacked by the larger steamers, which were then anchored below the fortress. Oh my gosh, everyone is frustrated with Goldsborough, particularly Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln actually will go to the shore line of Ocean View. You can go right where he walked on the beach, and will make the decision that, yes, I need to land troops here. So he goes to Wool, says, let's do this. He then asks Goldsborough to support it. Goldsborough says, I'm a little busy right now, but the president forced this two-prong naval expedition. And so the end result is going to be on the morning of May 11th, once Norfolk is captured, the Gloucester Naval Yard is captured on the early morning of May 11th. Thanks to Lincoln, not Goldsborough, the Virginia, without a deep port, will run aground and be scuttled. Such a sad finish to such a bright beginning, said Richard Curtis. Oh my gosh. So Keeler will say her career was short and infamous at her end, and sudden and unexpected. We knew her days were numbered, but felt confident she would die game rather than falling by her own hand. Now, Lincoln's happy with the course of events. And so he says, he actually goes into Norfolk. He then orders Goldsborough to push Rogers' force up the river. Now, this is where a problem is going to arise. They have created what would be called at this time a flying squadron, and that is going to be commanded by Commander John Rogers on the Galena. He is supported by the USS Monitor, also supported by the double ender Port Royal and a Roostock, as well as the Naugatuck. So we got 3 ironclads and 2 wooden gunboats going up the James. But Goldsborough had ordered Rogers, you must stop at every Confederate fort, make sure it's been abandoned, blow up their magazines, spike their guns, and move forward. Well, yeah, this is all beginning on May 11th. I got to tell you, this fort is under construction. This is Fort Darling on Drury's Bluff. So Goldsborough is wasting time instead of a flying squadron supposed to be what? Move quickly. And Goldsborough does not allow it to do so. So this becomes a huge problem for the Union. And of course, at the Battle of Drury's Bluff, the Federal Navy will be repulsed. Goldsborough, although maintains a good supply line, the men on the ships are out in the boiling heat of James River in the summer. They suffer miserably. There will be a conference on May. This is Drury's Bluff, of course. Okay, so there'll be a conference May 9, 1862. There's Lincoln, who comes down to Harrison's Landing. There is McClellan. They're talking about what's going to happen. McClellan says, look, I need more men. Lincoln says, you can't have any more men. That same old argument. And McClellan will actually, cause himself great injury on that very same day. This photograph is going to be taken of the crew of the officers of the USS Monitor. On that very same day, Goldsborough is going to have a significant problem because Gideon Wells thinks he is not as active as he should be. Remember, there's another Confederate ironclad being built at the Rockets in Richmond, the Virginia, well, it's the CSS Richmond. And so Gideon Wells is all upset that, wow, we're not being active. We could go up there and destroy that thing in its lair. And Goldsborough is just so inactive. So what's going to happen is Goldsborough is going to, on July 9, 1862, order Charles Wilkes to take command of a newly established James River Squadron. Wilkes, as we know, the polar explorer, Wilkes is a mean, haughty guy. He has actually did the Trent Affair, which made him a very popular figure in the minds of the Northern public. And so he was given this command. Now, let me tell you, what does Goldsborough think about this? Well, he doesn't think very much, because who replaced Goldsborough at the depot of charts and instruments? Wilkes. Who thinks he's better than Goldsborough? Wilkes. And Wilkes now has taken part of Goldsborough's command away from him. And Goldsborough is totally upset. Because he still says, I'm not going to work with the Army. Wilkes says, I can work with the Army. And so Goldsborough is placed in a decision because of his ego, probably also because he's really not doing a very good job in dealing with ironclads and rapid movement. So Goldsborough will resign as commander of the North Atlantic Blockading Squadron. Goldsborough will be assigned up to Washington, paper duties and so forth. After the war, he will be at the Washington Navy Yard. He'll command the European Squadron, and he will die in 1873. Goldsborough, if we look back and ascertain what are his strengths, he's a combat officer. He's a man of the age of sail. He, despite his brilliance, and I think he proves his brilliance, and how he begins setting up the depot of charts and instruments. That's a difficult job, and he takes something from nothing. Now, added to this, he does not make that transition. And there's so many officers, whether Army or Navy, during the Civil War that failed to make that important change from wood to iron, from sail to steam, from shot to shell. And Goldsborough's Civil War career is evidence of that failure of many officers. So anyway, actually, Lewis Goldsborough, his last picture, he's going to be replaced by this man, Samuel Phillips Lee, cousin to R.E. Lee. This is the Washington Navy Yard where he will be assigned later. And this is the European Squadron, which he'll command. There he is. He's lost all his weight, and he looks like a scholar. So Goldsborough is an outstanding officer of the old school, not the new school. So that's my little take on Lewis Goldsborough. So if you have any questions, please fire away.
Thank you, John. I should be here.
Yes, you are. I just saw you.
I did too. Where'd I go?
There.
Am I there?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Tell us a little bit more about Monticello, Florida. Is that still a place?
Yes, it's a small town. It's a county in southwestern Florida, the Panhandle. It was actually their courthouse is similar to Monticello, Jefferson's home, because Wirt was fascinated by whom? Jefferson. And so getting the sinecures of land grants in Florida, this all happens after Florida has been annexed by the United States in 1819. And so, yeah, it's Monticello is still there. It's a county, Monticello, or Jefferson County, excuse me. And so, yeah, it's still there. And I've never visited it because I just haven't. I don't know why. Buy it, but Pensacola had a bigger draw for me.
Right. Well, Miami Beach probably did too, John. So we, you were so thorough. We don't have questions. We had praise, of course. And for next Friday, join us to hear John talk about the Victory Arch, which is still standing, the second of them, correct, John, that have been built to commemorate veterans and World War I and II. And that will be next Friday at noon. And then the following Friday, we'll go back to the Civil War with naval intelligence in Hampton Roads during 1862, 63.
Well, 1861 to 62. Okay. Let me just tell you, I have had at least 20 requests to talk about naval intelligence.
Right.
And I like to say, well, you know, it was pretty easy to find out what the enemy was doing just by reading their newspapers.
Right.
But there is some intrigue in Hampton Roads, because just remember, 5 miles from Fort Monroe is Sewell's Point. So, you know, you're looking at each other every day. And of course, there's all sorts of ways that information about both navies flitters across Hampton Roads. So,
but we look forward to that one. And we appreciate your joining us. John, advance your slide again so we can contact information. Please let John know if you have questions later that we can answer for you, and certainly consider his books that are in the gift shop for the holiday gift giving season. He's happy
Huzzah.
for you. Yes. So we appreciate your being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday. And happy weekend to all. And we thank you as always for joining us. And thank you, John.
Lunch.
Yes, sounds good. Bye-bye.
Okay, Tom.
Bye-bye.